Cheer, cheer the red and the white, honor the name by day and by night. Lift that noble banner high, shake down the thunder from the sky. What though the odds be great or small?
Hello and welcome to this week's edition of the Swans Bigfooty podcast. I am your host Bonds. With me today is SM, SR100 and Soph. We're going to go straight into a review of our disappointing effort against Geelong, and I believe SM has some thoughts on the matter.
Yeah, I do. And look, this is the week I've really gotten fired up about this game. This was an absolutely dismal performance by the Swans. But not only the Swans, I want to start with the absolutely pathetic umpiring that goes on down at Kardinia Park. And I can't believe how one-eyed those bloody umpires are, that they can see Tippett being held and decide that it's a play on. When he stands there being tugged on his jumper by Tom Lonergan and the umpire just waves his hands to play on, it's bloody pathetic. And I can't understand how they can get away with such one-sided umpiring down there. And speaking of how one-sided things are down at Kardinia Park, the Geelong fans are the most one-eyed, arrogant, dim-witted fans that I've seen anywhere in footy. And there was a cross-section of that on Bigfooty during the game, which I had the pleasure of getting to speak to on the main board, who just time and again liked to remind us of what a flog Tippett was, what a spud, how overrated he was, and how we were whingers for thinking that we deserved any sort of sympathy from the umpire during the game. And I just can't believe how after 3 flags in the last 5 years, they can still think that they're entitled to any sort of sympathy from opposition fans or expectation that they should be given any sort of help during the match. I will say about the Swans, on a positive note, the fact that Hanbury was able to come back on after what I thought was a season-ending knee injury was absolutely phenomenal. And my heart goes out to Reece Shaw with what looks like a season-ending injury for him. But our kicking into the forward 50 was absolutely woeful and didn't do Tippett or White any favours yesterday. The bombing into the 50 when there was no one home was just absolutely pathetic, and you would have thought we'd learn our lesson after the Collingwood game, but it just happened again and again. And we just didn't run with the ball. I think there was one time in the fourth quarter where the Swans thought, hang on, if we hold possession, if we actually handball it up in a chain, this might actually lead us somewhere. Led to a goal when McGlynn speared a beautiful ball into Hanbury. But the rest of the time, the Swans just thought, hang on, even if Tippett's off the ground, let's just bang it into the 50 and hope someone's home to clunk a mark. We had Pike up there a couple of times who took a mark, but other than that, just nothing was going on. And I have to say, I'm not known for it, but I'm going to have to give a serve to Heath Grundy. What an absolutely dreadful performance from that overrated sack of spuds. Every time the going gets tough, he just crumbles under the pressure like a cheap chocolate. The ball comes into the 50 and he just stands there gazing at it as if he's a spectator in row 1, letting Richards try and do all the work, and Everett gets, overwhelmed with the pressure of it all. And Grundy's meant to be a senior member of the team, and he just sits there and gazes at it, or fires off a misplaced handball, which ends up ending up in another Geelong goal. And he just didn't do anything yesterday that convinced me that he's actually improved much this year. I mean, he's had a couple of good games this year, but absolutely terribly yesterday.
He topped the disposal efficiency for the whole team.
Yeah, well, who cares about that? It was more about his effort off the ball that was disappointing me. The fact that he didn't go in for any intercept marks, which the whole point about that partnership with Richards is that they're meant to peel off their man and go in to help each other when the going gets tough. And Grundy would just sit back and look at it. He was so laconic. He seemed like he was in second gear all day. He just didn't...
He was spectating a lot.
He was dreadful. Or he'd get tackled or he'd be on the ground and he'd just kind of sit there and watch as the player would run off with the ball. It was dreadful. But you know what, guys? The passion is back. Bring on the finals. Let's put this one behind us.
Definitely.
SR100, can I get your thoughts on the match?
Well, I have steam coming out of my headphones after that summary of the game, but I'll try and carry on. Interesting what you do say about Grundy, because you look at the 1%ers, you've got Richards 4, Malcheski 4, Rampy 4, and I think Grundy's on 2 or something like that, or something dismal, so I can see what you're saying there. But looking at that game, I think a few things stood out to me. The Clangers, 58-40, we beat them in that. That's good, isn't it? Clearances, we won 38-30. But that's because we have an extra bloody player for every stoppage. We get the clearance and kick it out straight to their loose player, usually Bartel. Marks, 108 to 66. What the hell's that? Tackles, 95 to 65. Their way, despite them having the ball 433 times to 349. Now, I know stats aren't everything, but surely if you've got the ball, that fewer times than the opposition, you might get somewhere near leading the tackle count when you're supposedly one of the best tackling sides in the AFL. Our bloody clangers. Look at the clangers for the year. We're 5th behind GWS, St Kilda, Brisbane and Port. And to give you an indication, Geelong and Hawthorn are 17th and 18th. Freo are 11th, but we're bloody 5th on the clangers list. Marks. Guess where we are for marks on the list in the AFL? Bloody 18th.
Yeah.
Less marks per game. Freo get 101 marks per game. Hawthorn 88. Geelong 93. Sydney gets 70 friggin' marks a game. The next worst is 75, and that's the Western Bulldogs. And where are they on the bloody ladder? If you look at disposal efficiency yesterday, no one was over 87%. The best two were bloody Grundy and Richards, our key defenders. But I would say 75% disposal efficiency is a fair pass mark. Less than 75% yesterday. Smith, Hanbury, Mumford, Parker, Everett, Mitchell, Bird, Jack, Kennedy, O'Keefe, Shaw, Tippett and Lamb. And what the hell does that show you? Hannahs, Parker, Mitchell, Bird, Jack, Kennedy, O'Keefe, Lamb, even they're all midfielders. That's where the problem is. The disposal efficiency in our midfield is pathetic the last few weeks. Our inside 50s are non-existent. We lost in Melbourne-like fashion with the inside 50s, 30-odd again for the game, like the Collingwood game. So people can say, yeah, we've got too Tippett conscious, but we don't even get it in there. And the entries into the forward 50 is shallow. The fact that he's got so many goals is bloody shows what a great player he is, if anything, because there's no opportunity in our forward line. The defence plays 90% of the game with the ball down there, so fair play to them. They're actually not too bad, but that midfield, supposedly one of the best in the AFL, just fumbles and makes so many bloody simple mistakes. I'll give you my highlight from yesterday, a big fat nothing. That was the worst game of football I've ever watched.
Final siren, it meant that it was over, it was done.
No, I was watching it with a Geelong fan. The low light, we lost the game in Melbourne-like fashion. With those inside 50 count was pathetic. And we should have lost by 100-plus points. There was nothing I took out of that game as a positive, except maybe that Rowan played a full game. That's it. Best player, Pike. White tried hard. The rest, rubbish. I'm sure did his knee. He did more than half the other people doing that, so that's about it. That was a rubbish effort.
Okay, so do you want to give your thoughts?
I actually didn't watch the game live. I actually sat down this afternoon and watched it online and got through half the game. And that, in saying that, I thought maybe our first half wasn't too bad, but just coming from what I saw, we spectated far too much. We just again bombed the ball too long, or I just felt that we were just running in there and just falling over far too much. And just to see, and SR was saying that, Teddy was, having the most influence on the game, which just means our defence is getting owned, and it's terrible. For me, the only positive that I can take out of the game, and this is probably a bit of a cheap shot, in slow motion, Kieran Jack took a shoulder to Joel Selwood's nose. And it bled out for a little while, and I was pretty pleased to watch Joel Selwood sit off the ground with a nosebleed.
Yeah, please, we can kill it.
Yeah, seriously. For me, the most annoying thing to come out of that game was bloody Paul Chapman. I hate him. Hate him. Oh, I could kill the crowd for how much they love that bloke, but seriously, I think he's a dirty, cheap scum player, and I'm sorry, Geelong, but I hate him. So,
you know who I hate? Steve Johnson.
Ugh.
Absolute flog.
I hate Geelong. They're a bunch of flogs down Geelong. Geelong, just because it's an odd year doesn't mean you're going to win it. Seriously, to all the Geelong fans out there, you're crap. I know you won, but I don't like you. Simple as that.
Okay.
One stage in the second quarter, Sydney 5 free kicks, Selwood was on 4. What the hell's that?
At one point during the match, we were on 5 free kicks and they were on 17.
How's your TV, SR?
And then on another part after that, they got up to 19 when we were on 6 and 21 when we were on 7. The wedges started evening out in the last quarter during junk time.
Yeah, and guess what? In the last quarter, when we actually started getting some frees, the Geelong fans started whinging about the free kicks. You can't have the shoe on the other foot and have a bitch about it. I mean, come on, get real. Just because the umps finally open their eyes once the heat's gone out of the game doesn't mean you can have a sook.
Okay, I'll give my thoughts on the game, I reckon. I'm going to try and put a few positives into it after the brilliant rants by all three of you. Okay, my positives for the game, Jared McVeigh once again had a strong performance, 31 disposals, and his efficiency was at 83.9%. He was also pulling off a lot of 1%ers around the ground, and watching the match actually at Skilled Stadium, or whatever they're calling it, Simmons Stadium, that's what they're calling it now. The amount of gut running he does behind the play, and the fact he was screaming at every player and pointing fingers yesterday was a good sight to see.
What he does best.
I liked Rohan getting through an entire match, and his rundown on Selwood was pure gold, especially because about 5 minutes... Oh, not Selwood, Bartel. His rundown on Bartel was pure gold, especially because 5 minutes beforehand, Bartel was giving it to him. He was bumping into him when he was resting in the forward line, niggling him. So to see Rohan run him down, I think nearly every Swans fan around me was pissed themselves with laughter. Apart from that, not too many positives, except for next week is a new week. And if you look at the end of last season, what happened in 3 of our last 4 matches? We lost to Collingwood, we got flogged by Geelong, and we lost to Hawthorn, and look what happened. Let it happen again, I say. Bring it on.
And look, just in all seriousness, I mean, looking at the actual stats, Von touched on it last week that one of our big problems against the Pies, I think, was that we didn't have enough midfielders getting their hands on the ball. And you look at the stats, and this week we had Kennedy on 32, McVeigh on 31, Jack on 28, and Hanbury on 23. And you look at that and you think, geez, that's a good day out in the office. But as SR touched on, the disposal efficiency, I mean, it's no use getting the ball if you're then just going to give it right back to Geelong. So that's something that we really need to consider going forward. There's something that's gone wrong. Disposal efficiency's down. Inside 50s are really poor, and we have 1 week left to really fix that up before finals.
The fact that we're 5th for clangers for the year indicates to me that it's been a problem all year. It's just we get away with it against, like St Kilda, we get away with being crap. We can't do it against Geelong and Hawthorn and maybe Freo. You can't, and Collingwood, because they're not a bad side. You can't do it.
Well, I was about to say, I mean, you look at the Collingwood game earlier in the year and we didn't seem to be too bad.
Yeah, that was probably an exception rather than the rule, though.
But you also have to look at who was in that team when we played Collingwood at the beginning of the year. We had Sam Reid, had Adam Goods,
And we had super Adam Goods. Like, he was exceptional that night. He won the game almost. But at the risk of being kicked out by the host, I'm going to say McVeigh wasn't that good. He didn't have any... He had 0 1%ers for the game. And how many contested possessions did he have? I think he should start leading from the front and go in the bloody midfield when the chips are down. He's just getting easy kicks.
Yeah,
30
look,
possession.
I don't understand why he's still playing off the half back. He should be back in the midfield.
Well, it's a bit
I
hard
guess
now that
because
Shaw's out
Mount
of the
Chesney
side
can't
again.
kick bloody straight. Someone's got to go back there and get a decent kick. But
Yeah.
get in the middle and be the bloody captain, you piss weak bloody flog.
As a hypothetical, could we throw Rohan back?
Well,
He has speed
Oh,
and he
back,
uses the
okay.
ball well. Or better than he used to, at least.
the idea was floated around when he was originally meant to come back into the team that he thought that they would push him back into defence and that he'd play defence because he is quite tall and he's actually quite solidly built and he would be he's fast. So imagine shaking off a forward player, marking the ball and running off with it. So it's possible. Whether or not we'll try it this late in the season, who knows? But I could see him doing it.
Yeah, look, I'm Rowan. Sorry.
I'll throw all bloody 18 players back there because the ball's down there 90% of it doesn't matter.
It worked in
Defence-
05.
Defence isn't that bad. It's the bloody midfield let the ball go down there every 5 seconds. Oh, who's going to defend that? The defence stopped us losing by 100 points.
And look, dare I say it, the coaching moves yesterday were a bit bad, bit bizarre in the fact that O'Keefe was on Bartel for so long that it got to the point where even Dunstall, who's probably one of our biggest critics, finally suggested in a helpful way that perhaps O'Keefe, revolutionary as it may be, should be taken off Bartel and actually turned into an attacking player.
Do you think the coaching was perhaps indicative of like, okay, guys, we're going out there like this, get yourselves out of it, let's see what Lamb learns, what does Mitchell learn, what do these young guys learn playing against arguably the best side in the comp? And if
maybe.
We lose.
But what's O'Keefe going to learn playing on Bartel?
No, but he's not in the midfield. He's not going to come in and save you. McVeigh's not going to come in the middle and save us. Bolton's not playing. The young guys, you're going to go in there and take responsibility and learn from being flogged. That's just a hypothetical. I don't know. But there was a lot of non-coaching moves yesterday, if I'm being very critical.
It was bizarre, yeah.
I do want to increase on one positive just for everyone. Mike Pike's performance, he was back to his previous standards at the start of the year. 6 contested marks, 3 goals. Amazing. Brilliant.
He's worked out if you want to get a mark in the forward 50, get in front of Tippett's space, because that's where the ball's going. And his ability to take contested marks vital with that rubbish delivery into the forward line. Big tick. And also Jessie White's work rate against a quality side. He wasn't dominant or anything, but the old Jessie White would have got about 2 kicks in that game. And yesterday he was in the contest, so credit to him.
Well, that's actually a great tie into our next subject. What are we going to do with Jessie White next year? I've heard from a reasonably good source that it looks like he is going to re-sign in the coming weeks, which is a nice thing to hear. He's apparently demanded game time, which is something that isn't great here, but if he keeps on playing the way he's playing at the moment, I can't see us dropping him. Whether that means we move Reed back or we move possibly White onto a wing and run him through the midfield, he's definitely mobile enough. It's just wait to be seen. Soph, you've got a few thoughts on this as well?
Look, I've watched White for a couple of years now, especially coming through the reserves, and he was always dominant in the reserves. Like a couple of years ago, he played a game at the SCG against the Tuggeranong Hawks, and he wasn't playing on a very good defender, but he kicked 12 goals. Jessie can get the ball and he can dominate forward. And, the last couple of weeks, I've always been a bit sceptical. I've never thought that he was going to be, a dominant player for the Swans, but you watch Jessie's, work ethic the last couple of weeks, and he's been really, really good. And I watched him yesterday in the Geelong game, and, he pushes hard. For more of an offside of the football, thing, his partner has just, landed quite a successfully big job. So whether or not he's trying to help her stay in Sydney as well, so maybe that's another reason why he'll sign. But, Jessie can play. It's just whether or not we give him the game time to keep him developing. But he's been better this year than he has in previous years. So that's how I see it.
Yeah, I think the pass mark really for him for the year was whether he could stand up in big games. And I think yesterday was our first chance to really see him perform in a big game. I guess there was the Pies game a couple of weeks ago where he didn't do a whole lot. But there were a couple of passages yesterday where he really used his body to outmuscle a Geelong opponent and get the ball, which I thought was quite impressive.
I just like the fact that once the ball goes to ground, he's actually fighting for it now. If you look at the start of the year or last year, the second efforts weren't there. Now he's playing like a man possessed. It's brilliant to watch.
But is that a man chasing a contract? Like, is there a certain amount that comes from that versus here's a 2-year deal, you've got a bit more security? It's not on the line as much. I don't know. But to me, Jessie White's problem has always been that he's not a ruckman's arsehole, really, to be honest. And he's been asked to play that stupid ruck forward role or full-time ruck or whatever. He's a forward, and now he's finally being asked just to play as a forward. He doesn't have the number one defender. He can use his big imposing size because he doesn't have the best defender hanging off him. He can push through, he can run through the middle, and it forces him to lift that work rate. To me, there's just a few key questions, like, is he in our best 22? What's his trade value versus going into the draft? If he said, well, stuff you because I'm out of contract, I'll go to a rubbish side, and how much will he cost? Because I believe surely his contract must be a little bit inflated from when he was...
Because of the Gold Coast.
Yeah, so... Yeah. I mean, to me, he's not worth much more than $350K. And if he's happy to play for that, then keep him. Because as we've seen this year, you need 26 to 30 good players to be competitive because you've got to be able to cover injuries. So maybe he isn't best 22, but if he's best 26 and he costs what he costs now, then he's definitely at that spot if he's happy to play for that.
The issue is if he's best 22, it means where do you put Sam Reid? And I think if as some have suggested, I think it was Bonds who said we could use Reid as a swingman, that would be pretty much taking Everett's spot, really, if Reid's going to come back in. And so the question becomes, would you rather have Reid in as the swingman or Everett? And I guess, because he's got the runs on the board, you might say Reid, in terms of his marking abilities, slightly better than Everett's. But otherwise, I can't see a spot.
I still believe Everett and Reid are completely different players. But
if you were saying that you'd use Reid in that sort of role, that's the role that Everett's currently playing.
Would we feel, let's say the match is on the line, we need to get a goal in the last couple of minutes, who would you rather throwing forward, Reid or Everett? If a defender gets Everett, really?
Well, I mean, Everett's already got the proof of that. He kicked the winning goal against Geelong last year.
Fair enough.
I mean, I wouldn't trust Reid's kicking.
Okay.
I prefer Everett kicking for goal over Reid. I still think Reid's got a lot to develop with his goal kicking.
Sam Reid would have a fair bit of currency on the trade market if we're that worried about squeezing him into best 22s.
We wouldn't trade off Reid. We would not trade off Reid.
But that's the question. You're saying now that you'd rather trade Reid than White. And surely I would rather push White out.
Oh, no. No. No, I'm saying I wouldn't trade. I'm not worried about it. As I say, I think you need to go, here's our core 26 plus players, which includes White, Reid and Everett.
I'd personally start developing Reid as a backman who can swing forward, similar to what Geelong have done with Taylor. I mean, Grundy and Richards aren't exactly spring chickens now, and if we can push Grundy out of sight, I know one of the podcasters here will be very happy.
But the problem is,
on your point, Bonds, Malcheski, Pike, LRT, Richards, Matner, who's already gone, Shaw, who we'll discuss later, O'Keefe, Bolton, who's probably gone, and Goods, they're all 30 plus next year. So, I mean, maybe Reid is actually a full-time backman, because as good as Johnson was last year, I mean, he's coming off a knee injury. Round one, we're going to put him on Buddy Franklin or something? Unlikely. So maybe Reid is actually going to end up as a full-time backman if White flourishes. Maybe it's not a swingman role. But we have to plan for the future. Teddy's not going to be as good next year, you wouldn't have thought. And I think there's some concerns over the age of our list, so that's where I'd be focused on.
Well, when Sam Reid was coming through the TAC at Murray, he was one of the best up-and-coming backmen actually coming through. Yeah. His ability to spoil...
I've always found that funny that Ben Reid was the forward and Sam Reid was the backman, and they've kind of switched.
Like, his biggest strength when he was coming through as an underage player was his ability to peel off the man and come in and take a floating mark or a spoil. The fact he's got such long arms and his athletic ability is... I was very surprised when we started making him a forward when we drafted him. I was very happy when we drafted him, I'm not going to lie. I had him going in the first round, but... if we can turn him into a defender, and that's where I believe his true potential is, I reckon he could be a great thing for us.
I think he's played, one game in defence for us, and that was that Geelong game back in 2011, I think it was.
He also helped out...
And his debut, I think, against Brisbane, didn't he play defence that night? Or?
He played centre-half forward. He led
forward because he was on merit.
He kicked 3 goals that game.
Yeah, that's true.
The other thing you got to also look at when we threw him back to kind of stop the blight against Hawthorn this year. Oh, not Hawthorn, against Fremantle earlier on this year. He was brilliant.
Got the match-saving mark on the line.
Exactly. I'd love to have Reid as a loose man in defence more than any other... His field kicking is a lot stronger than his goal kicking. He's probably the best mark in our team still, especially floating. If we can use him as a loose man in defence, that's a massive win for us.
So, does White staying hinge on Reid becoming a defender to you guys? Or can we just sign both and worry about that later? Or what?
Well, The issue is, I guess, if White's demanding guaranteed game time, because I agree with the point that you're making that we could have a sort of 26-player group that kind of gets rotated through the team. But if that's not necessarily going to guarantee White the game time he wants, then who knows what he's going to say to that.
But in saying that, if we're not going to keep White, what's our trade value? What are we going to get for him? Who do we try and sell him to, and who do we get in return? Or what draft picks do we get? That's where I see what's his trade potential.
I think it's definitely gone up recently.
But it gets minimised if he wants to go to a lower side who could potentially get him for nothing in the draft if he puts the right price on his head. It minimises his trade value a little bit.
Apparently, the three clubs chasing White hardcore are Fremantle, which has been well documented, Brisbane purely because of the Queensland factor and they're lacking forwards now, evidenced by Brown's possible retirement and them playing Merritt at full forward. And the other one that's going through the circles is St Kilda, surprisingly.
Okay.
If it was
thought they'd finally try and take a key forward off us.
Yeah.
What about Carlton? I think he'd be a better fit at Carlton than some of those sides.
He probably would be, but Carlton have got so many ruckman and talls that they want to attempt to rotate forward. They probably wouldn't think it's worth the value. The issue is if you look at those clubs, if he decides to go to Brisbane or St Kilda, he can pretty easily probably walk through the preseason draft, especially in St Kilda's case. They're going to have pick 2 or 3. If he decides to go to Fremantle, it's going to be harder, and we'd probably be able to demand their first round pick. It'll be a late first round pick, but we'd probably be able to demand it and possibly get it.
I feel like he wouldn't be worth much more than a second round, to be honest. I don't think he quite has the runs on the board to get a first round pick.
I could see more going as a player swap than a draft pick.
But they don't have a player that we want.
Because that's what we tried to do with him last year.
But you could have a 3-way trade, or I don't know.
Yeah, that's true.
We tried to trade him to Adelaide last year, and purely the only reason why he didn't go to Adelaide last year is because he couldn't get to Adelaide to take a fitness test. That's the only reason he didn't go. He couldn't get there to take a fitness test, and Adelaide didn't want to risk it.
Yeah, that's the sliding doors moment.
Yeah. Wasn't that when they then decided to come out and say that they'd been cheating?
Who knows?
But,
and then Demetrio. Oh, no. I know someone at Adelaide, so I won't share what I know on air.
Yeah. But look, I think the player that we'd most need in would be a key defender, surely. As we're just discussing, our defence isn't exactly spring chickens. So we need to be looking at getting a young defender in.
Well, if we can keep our first round pick or potentially move it up a few spots, if we can move our pick up to about 13, 14 in this year's draft, then we could possibly draft Darcy Gardiner, who should slide between, 12 and 17, somewhere around there. He's probably the best key defender coming through the draft.
I think we need one who's ready to go now from another club, like a 24 to 26-year-old.
Talia.
Oh, yeah, totally.
No, but a more realistic one, like a Tate Pears or anyone
Mitch
like
Brown.
that, sort of, who might be better at Sydney.
Kyle,
if we
Kale
go
Hooker.
around the panel, what do you all honestly think will happen with White from here?
I think
What do you
he's
think the club
gone.
will do?
I think we'll sign him. I think we'll sign him and play him as a centre-half forward next year.
I think we'll trade him.
I think it's going to depend on Reid's fitness and whether the club's willing to sacrifice him as a forward. But I have a feeling that White will probably stay purely because of the culture of the club and the way that we'll probably be able to get in his ear and convince him to stay if we really want him. But if the club doesn't think they need him, I could see him going to a club where he'll get more game time.
The thing is, as well, he might sacrifice game time next year, but the year after, when a few of our players retire and get older, he should be able to get a lot more game time then. So it may be just a short-term sacrifice for long-term gain.
Yeah.
SR100, do you reckon he'll stay or leave? We're just going to move on to the next subject after this.
I reckon it depends on the final series and depends on Jessie. Does he back himself to kick Reid out of a spot and keep him out? Who knows? I think the club will keep him for the right price.
Okay, well, we're going to move on to our next subject. We were touching on it before in regards to retirements. What does the future hold for Reece Shaw? SM, do you want to take it away?
Well, from what I've heard, he's unfortunately done his ACL, which is never good news at that sort of age. But he's apparently looking at the Lars operation. So I think it's all hinging on that, and I think he'll probably assess his options before list lodgements and make a final decision then. But look, honestly, my gut feeling is we've probably seen the end of Reece Shaw, unfortunately.
It's a shame. He was looking like he was actually starting to run himself back into a little bit of form. So
it's a shame for someone who's given us pretty good service if he goes out with a knee injury at Simmons Stadium as his last game. He doesn't deserve that.
Probably the worst possible way to go out, at the worst possible place.
But the way how I see it is that he's missed a fair bit of the year with that abdominal strain or whatever, that he tore the muscle in his stomach or something that's kept him out for such a period of time. And he's only just gotten back in a couple of weeks ago against the Western Bulldogs, and then played against Collingwood and then against
St Kilda, yeah.
And has now then gone down with said ACL injury. I reckon he was already looking at retirement beginning of the year with the abdominal injury, and I've heard rumours that he was thinking of retirement this end of year anyway. So why go through and have last surgery if you're already going to retire? Unless, now that he's got a possible glimpse that he could keep going with the games that he's played in the last couple of weeks. But I look at, if he didn't play so much this year, why go on if you've just done your knee and done an ACL, which is a 12-month injury, and then what is it with last surgery? 12 months cut to what? 6 months, 4 months?
4 months or something. I think he'd be fit for round one if he took Lars.
If he took Lars, he'd look at starting to run properly late October, November. He'd start running. Contact sessions early January. And potentially a couple of late preseason games if he can get himself up to full fitness.
But do you risk it? Do you push yourself at that age and put yourself back?
That's the issue.
Football? Why?
The injuries at that age are much worse. I mean, look at Goods. All of a sudden does his calf last year, and all of a sudden has a reoccurrence this year. You don't recover as well at this sort of age.
If that was me, it's as devastating as it is to tear your knee and you want to be out there playing football with your teammates. I'd be saying in the back of my head, I won a premiership last year. It's time to hang up the boots and give it to work on helping. And what I've seen for Reece as well. He's quite a good player off field. He's quite a good mentor that I've heard. So why not just put up the boots and stay around the club for the next couple of weeks, couple of months, and mentor the younger kids?
Well, yeah. Do you reckon he'd stay at the club long term as a coach?
Well, he's getting married at the end of the year, and I think he's quite settled in Sydney. So maybe I could definitely see him as being a mentor for the younger kids. And I think he's done from coming from Melbourne and settling in Sydney. I think Reece Shaw has become a really good player, in terms of off-field stuff. So I could see him sticking around the club and just helping out the younger kids.
Apparently his work with Gary Rowan and our injured players has been fantastic.
Yeah, phenomenal.
I'd love to keep him at the club. He's been... When I originally heard that we were picking up Reece Shaw from Collingwood, I won't lie, I wasn't exactly happy about it, but I'll take back anything I've ever said about him as a Collingwood footballer. He's been brilliant.
It's sad. It's, any player, for me, when you see a player go down with any sort of knee injury, let alone an ACL, you feel gutted for them. And, I only watched the first half of the game yesterday and, seeing Shaw on the bench and, that you see those big, heavy eyes that they have and you just feel so bad for them and you just want to sit there and just sit with them and tell them that it's going to be okay. But, this late in the season, how much can you be okay? And, can you back it up and go again next year, or do you just say that's it?
Speaking of knee injuries, I touched on it earlier, but we were so lucky. We dodged a bullet with Hanbury. When he was carried off the field, I thought there goes our finals hopes. And next thing you know, he's running around on the field after half time again. It was ridiculous.
And kicked 2 goals.
Yeah.
One thing I will say about Shaw yesterday, what I did love, even though after he'd done his knee injury, when we got a little bit of a run on in the third quarter, he started doing a couple of fist pumps and getting into the match. As soon as I saw that, I couldn't help but smile and just forgot about the score. He was still supporting us all the way.
Well, Shaw's been obviously given a second chance in football, coming from Collingwood, losing in 2002. I think he comes from a big, passionate team, football family. So I think Shaw loves playing football and wants to play. He got, the ultimate prize in winning a premiership last year. So to sit there and be, to tear your ACL, but for him to sit there on the boundary line and to see him fist pumping just means how much football means to him. So it's a shitty situation, if I'm allowed to say that word.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine.
As the only panellist here who's ticked over to 30, I can say he's getting some old man injuries, and you want to keep going, and I can understand when it's fresh, you want to still prove you can get out there and do it, but he's 33 next October.
Yeah.
Like, give me a spell. He was retiring at the end of the year, in my humble opinion, and if he's out of contract, then I wouldn't waste the money re-signing him as good as he's been. It's a cutthroat industry. Plenty of depth in. Thanks for the memories, Reece. Goodbye.
Yeah.
Pack your bags and find something else to do. Because you're not in our best 22 anyway.
No.
Okay, we'll move on from there. We'll go on to preview of the Hawks match this weekend. SM, do you want to take it away?
Jeez, can't get much worse than last week, so I guess all we can do is improve. No, don't say that. Don't say that. All we can do is improve. And from what I've heard, it's going to be raining on Friday night, and the Hawks shrivel up and die in the rain. So that's our best chance of getting a run on. And look, all I want to see is a good team effort. Whether we rest players or we don't rest players, I'll leave that to Longmire because it can go one of two ways there. But I just want to see a good team effort. Lowering the eyes, the bombing into the 50 is driving me insane. Can we just hit some targets, or run it through by hand and just link up and get some good run on going? And look, that's all I'm hoping for. I'm not that fussed whether we win or lose, I guess, given the fact that we can't change position. And I don't think the players would even lose too much morale if we lose. So, yeah, no injuries, no reports, just a good, solid game to get us into gear for finals.
Personally, I'm hoping we bring back a few players from injury next week and just give them the run, give them a test. Play Jetta, play Reed. If it's possible to give LRT a run, give him a run. I'm not concerned if he doesn't have any reserves form. Just get some football in his players' belts and hope for the bloody best.
And look, you know what? You could just park LRT in the goal square, and the way that we're kicking the ball, he'd get about 5 or 6 goals if he just stands there, because I reckon our kicks are just going straight to the goal square, even if we don't have a player there. So he doesn't even have to run. He just stands in the goal square, puts up his jukes, and takes a couple of marks.
The thing with LRT is, and before everyone howls me down, he's a great player and I'd love to have him back. But every week that he is out injured, he becomes a better and better player in everyone's memory than he ever was, to be honest. He's not the answer to anything. Look,
I reckon the game against Geelong earlier in the year where he got injured, he was really starting... He's basically a poor man's Adam Goods. He can play forward, he can play back, and he can play on the ruck if needed. And he's not the best player, but the fact that he gives us that flexibility is always a very good.
No, don't get me wrong.
If
fit LRT is best 22, give him back, but I'm not going to risk next year to rush LRT back. But, I've come along after watching the Sydney Geelong, Fox Footy show the old games, the day of the game in the morning. And the last time we beat Geelong at the SCG last year, the player that stood out to me in a few passages was Lewis Jetta. And as much as I'd love Goods back, right now I've come along the line of thinking that I would love Jetta back more than anyone else out of that injury list, just to add that dash and pace. But 2012 Jetta, the leading goal kicker Jetta, the playmaker Jetta, not that shadow of a man we saw earlier in the year, but confident Jetta. I want him back. If he can play, pick him. I agree with that sentiment, but...
Do we possibly think...
Yeah, that's the issue, is you don't know which Jetta you're going to get.
No, I don't know.
Do we possibly think that the fact that Jetta was playing so out of form earlier on the year was due to his contract talks? The fact that he's signed a new contract whilst being injured, do we reckon that may actually help him?
I think he got worked out a little bit by opposition and he got closer attention. He was probably one of the main areas. You play Sydney, start of this year, one of your main areas of focus is to shut down Jeddah's runs, shut down that so-called slingshot footy, and Jeddah's a big part of that, and he doesn't handle attention. He needs to learn to handle it. That was his problem, more than anything.
It also made me harder to take out Jeddah out at Rowan's in the side as well.
Guys, can I just interrupt there? I have a bit of breaking news here. Apparently, Jude Bolton is about to announce his retirement on Monday morning.
Really? Well, we all knew that was coming. It was on a 1-year contract.
Yeah.
I do have to give a shout out to Are You Envious because he's the one who's posted this on the Swans board, but I thought I would just give it a shout out on here. There's a bit of live breaking news.
That's an interesting timing for the announcement. I guess it's a farewell to Sydney, though we will get a home final, but maybe it's a bit of inspiration, I don't know. But, yeah, we don't have many two-time premiership players, many 300-game players, so sad day to see him walk out the door, though I think we'd all agree this time.
Hopefully he can leave a triple premiership player.
Yeah, that'd be nice, wouldn't it?
Fingers crossed. Yeah. Fingers crossed.
Anyway, does anybody remember the last time we played Hawthorn out at ANZ was round 2, 2009, the year they had just won the premiership, and we actually came out and won that game at ANZ. And
that was the only game where Jessie White has looked half a ruckman. I think he had something like 30 hitouts for the game.
So if we can go into this, I don't think we're going to win it. I would like to win it, but if we can go into this game and just go and just have a contest and maybe try and bring a player back from injury. The only player that I can see coming back from injury is Lewis Jeddah. But if we can go out and have a good contest and if we can just get back to kicking some decent goals, then that's a good game. You know what I mean? If we can just, I don't know if we can freshen up bodies in this game, but if we can get back some sort of, get our midfield going again, then this is some of the positives that we have to look forward to this game. So
it sounds odd for a top 4 side that we are to be thinking that way, but after the uncompetitive effort against Geelong, you just want to see a contest. Like if we lose by 25 points, but you can say, gee, for 3 quarters that was a good game, and you can see 1 or 2 things we can change for the week after, then that'll do me, as negative as that might seem. But you just want to see that effort, that vigour, and just working on a few things like the disposal efficiency getting up, because I don't know, we're playing a team that are elite ball users. That's Hawthorn's MO, and I just think we've got to pressure them. We can't let Hodge play loose. You can't let Mitchell run around on half back. And actually, this is one week our 3 tall forwards could work as well, stretch that back line of Hawthorn's. I think that's probably one of the reasons Tippett was signed, to stretch Hawthorn's defence. So him and V Lake, that'll be an interesting matchup.
One thing I will say about this week, if Jude Bolton's retirement is legit, and that will be quite saddening, we'll want to get up for Jude. It could potentially be one of his last games ever in Sydney. We're going to be playing like maniacs.
But I'm sorry, I'm one of those people that I hate using milestones or retirement as a reason to get up for a game. Don't just go out and play football. That's what they're paid to do. Play football and win games. I know, and Jude Bolton's amazing.
It makes
and he's
a difference.
A 2-time premiership player, and one of them. He is one of our club champions. You know what I mean. But don't get up just because it's Jude Bolton's he's retiring. You know what I mean. Go out there and win round 23 because we need to win round 23.
The issue, if I was the coaches, I would be pushing this on the players simply because we've been flat for a few weeks now. We're not going to lie. This could give us just that little bit of extra motivation we needed. It'll actually give us a reason to actually put our asses in line for once.
It seems a bit un-Sydney, though. It almost smacks, we're presuming it's true, it smacks a little of desperation to find this hidden motivation to get the guys going. I'm a bit with Soph on that. Just play the bloody game. We could knock Hawthorn off second and we could almost still finish third. Go there and win the game because of what it is. And I'm not suggesting they are announcing their retirement just to get a spur, but I'm not big on that either. Just win it. Just play your best.
But look, hopefully what it does do is it brings more people to the ground and gets that atmosphere really going and gets the fans behind the team. Because while I completely agree that it shouldn't provide extra motivation for the players, hopefully it provides a bit of extra motivation for the fans to really get out and send them off a winner.
That's a good point.
It's going to be an interesting game also, being a Friday night game. And also the fact is that as Swans fans, our last couple of Swans home games have all been Sunday afternoon twilight footy games, which, you know, have probably dropped the crowd a little bit. So hopefully having a Friday night game, we can probably get a decent crowd, even though it's out at Homebush and nobody likes going out there. Hopefully we can get a big crowd. And, you know, for me personally, you're probably all going to hate me. I actually quite enjoy Hawthorn, and I like watching Hawthorn play. And I like seeing Lance Franklin up forward and Jared Ruffhead up forward. And is Cyril playing?
Cyril will be playing.
Yeah, I love seeing Cyril play, and I like Brad Sewell and I like Luke Hodge. So I'm actually looking forward to seeing the contest of those, you know, our boys up against, you know, Hawthorn. And the fact that we, you know, I guess this is the team that we played in the premiership last year, so there's that rivalry. So, you know, hopefully we can, if we just go out, I don't care if we lose. If we just go out and have a good contest, I'll be happy with that.
Personally, I can't really stand Hawthorn. I like Jack Gunston as both a player and a person. Especially as a player, he's quite brilliant. But if I see one buddy or the commentators going crazy about him on Monday, I'll go insane. All I want from the match is Ted Richards to smash Franklin. Or even better, Grundy to smash him. That'll just be fantastic.
Just do something positive for the team. Come on,
Grundy, knock out Franklin. Let it happen. Yeah. Knock him out, break his cheekbone, take him out of finals. I'll accept the suspension.
Yeah, we got
last year.
We got a nice big reserves player who wants to play one game for the year, make a name for himself.
Well, I actually had that.
Bring in Tim Membry. Make him take out Hodge. It'll be fantastic.
Bring in Membry or bring in Biggs or someone like that, and just line Franklin up and let him rip.
The problem is, though, the reserves obviously were the minor premiers, so they had this week off, and they don't play till the day after the seniors do. So it's a bit of a, can you throw somebody in Raw?
Yeah, why not? Why not?
It doesn't take much fitness to knock a bloke out.
Exactly.
If someone was going to knock a bloke out, I'd put Tim Membry in.
Yeah, it'd have to be Membry. Membry has thrown a few punches through his junior career as well, and has actually had a bit of boxing training coming through, so he should be fine. He should be able to take someone out for us.
He can recreate the famous Bazza punch on Staker.
Oh, dear God. If he did that on Franklin, I will fly up to Sydney and hug him. If Membry comes in and kills Franklin or knocks him out, I will kiss him.
But honestly, if we're just having a bit of a piss take here, if I want one thing to, you know, for our team to change something, please change the fluoro boots, boys. Doesn't make you a better football player. Grundy, get rid of those bloody blue boots, those bloody fluoro blue boots. I'm sick of seeing them. They're all wearing the same ones.
I've let rip at him a couple of times at the SCG, but clearly he hasn't heard me.
Hasn't heard it. Got to get rid of those fluoro boots, boys.
Okay, we may have to call it there for a night. Do we have a special code word for tonight?
Yes, I think it is Alex referring to Grundy as cheap chocolate.
Grundy is cheap chocolate. Okay, guys, our code word for tonight is Grundy is cheap chocolate. If you post that in the podcast board, you'll get 4 likes from us 4 podcast viewers. Yep. There you go. There are your cheap likes for this week.
Can I just say we'll win the game by 25 points?
Yeah.
My prediction is I actually think we're going to get up and win by 47. I reckon we're going to pump them this week.
Yep.
We're going to win 4 in a row.
I'm going to call it. Grundy kicks the match-winning goal.
No, I would implode.
You know what? I'll pay to see that. If Grundy kicks a match-winning goal in any final this year, I will donate $300 to a charity of the Swans board choice.
If Grundy kicks the winning goal?
If Grundy kicks a winning goal in this match or a final this year, I'll donate $300 to a charity of the Swans board's choice.
Awesome, done.
It's easy to talk big when it's not going to happen.
If Grundy's disposal efficiency drops below 80%, seeing as he's actually elite with his ball use, I'll donate $2 to a charity of someone's choice.
Yeah, I'll go one better. We'll go off on a high. Swans win the premiership this year. I will personally donate $150 to a charity of the Swans board's choice, and we'll see if any of the other podcasters want to chip in on it as well.
If the Swans win the premiership, I'll bear my ass on the Myer building in town. That's how bloody
I like that one.
unlikely that is to happen.
I'm not-
There's
I'm
your
not-
podcast title.
Yeah, I'm not betting anything, but we'll just keep it going week by week. I just want to make sure that Alex doesn't end up in hospital if Grundy kicks anything.
Yeah, we'll have to
Be
see.
alright.
Okay, well, we're going to cut it there short for a night, guys. Everyone from
I
the
thought you were
Swans board,
covered.
thanks for listening. I'm Bonds, your host, along with SM, Soph, and SR100. Thanks for listening, and good night.